The Jordan Kyrou rumors continue to swirl around the St. Louis Blues. The New York Rangers attempt a retool on the fly. And are the Anaheim Ducks closer to being a playoff team after their busy offseason? We've got all that and a lot more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor-Simon. And Haley, it's been an interesting offseason in St. Louis. You look at this offseason, are the Blues in a better spot now than they were at the end of the playoffs?
I would have to say yes. And it has been a crazy offseason in St. Louis. While some of the moves may not be as big to others, I believe that the trade of Zach Bolduc, who was one of my personal favorites to Montreal in exchange for Logan Mayhew, was one of the biggest moves that the Blues made. Also, the Blues getting rid of Nick Leddy, giving him to San Jose was a move that I also felt was very appropriate. Those were moves that were going to better the team in the long run. I know that the Blues, Doug Armstrong, GM of the Blues, stated that he actually had a lot of interest in Logan Mayhew prior to the draft when the Canadiens selected him. So for me, I was a little bit less surprised. Now, I was surprised, though, Gil, that the Blues were willing to get rid of Zach Bolduc. This was a player that had such a great second half of the season and a lot of potential. And there is a sort of disappointment, right? Because you want to see some of the younger prospects that you drafted relatively recently succeed. However, there seems to be a lot of hope surrounding Logan, and I know that he had a bit of an iffy past off the ice, but he has, at least from, what Doug Armstrong has said, even the Canadiens personnel, he has made a lot of strides to just be a better person, and I care about how you play. That's my number one priority. However, I also want you to be a good person off the ice too. So if they're saying that, I'm going to trust them because I do trust Doug Armstrong. But I can't lie when I say that I am upset about losing Zach Bolduc.
Where do you think Mayhew will fit into this lineup?
That's a good question. Now, there's a lot of people that are kind of speculating that he might be ready this season. I disagree. I think that him having some time with the Springfield Thunderbirds will maybe be the best scenario for him. I know that he did play 7 games for the Canadiens last season, and while he didn't do as great as a job, I don't want to put too much of that pressure on him because 7 games isn't really like that many games to where you can truly assess a player. But when he was playing with the AHL team of the Canadiens, he was like the AHL All-Star of like the week, and he got all of these awards. So I feel like for me, I just need to see him at least have a little bit of consistency with the Thunderbirds, and maybe, hey, he does a good job within the first month of hockey, then you bring him up. But I wouldn't necessarily say put him on the starting roster immediately. I kind of want to make sure that he's able to adjust and fit in with the system and then bring him up.
The Jordan Kyrou rumors won't go away. It just seems like it's going on. Now, you mentioned before we started recording July 1st, the no trade clause kicks in. So he has to approve any move that may be made. What's the latest, and is he staying or is he going?
Well, ironically, the latest is that there was talks about the Montreal Canadiens. We can't get rid of the Canadiens this offseason. I think he's staying, though. There's always going to be rumors surrounding Jordan Kyrou, and I don't blame people for having interest in him. He did put up 70 points this past season. Past 3 seasons, he did score 30-plus goals. This past season, he did score 36 goals, allowing him to be number 16 in the NHL for most goals scored. So he does hold a lot of value. What I will say is that people really drive me crazy about their reasoning as to why the Blues would even get rid of him. They don't mention maybe the turnovers, maybe it's the bad positioning. They mention this drama. And for those that are listening and not watching, I did put that in quotations because there is no drama with Kyrou and the Blues. There was a comment that Kyrou made when Craig Berube was fired, and he apologized for it, and he didn't necessarily mean it by any means. And people to this day, years later, are saying, oh, well, there's drama between the Blues and Kyrou. Now, if somebody said to me, Gil, hey, with Kyrou's turnovers, it's really hurt the Blues. We saw that in the playoffs. I could then maybe listen to somebody and say, you know what, logical, I completely agree. But when they make up this false narrative surrounding drama, that's not true. I think that's what annoys me. But again, you have Kyrou and Robert Thomas both being paid $8.1 million AAV a season. So it's not like it's an outrageous number. It's not like we're Mitch Marner in Vegas getting paid 12. But I do think that Kyrou was one of the best players on the Blues. Now, he's not the best. That's Robert Thomas, Jordan Binnington, Colton Parayko. But he is up there. So for the Blues to get rid of Jordan Kyrou, they would be a worse team than they are right now. And if you get rid of Kyrou, you're not going to be getting a star player back. You're not going to be getting the first overall draft pick. So it would not make sense for the Blues and for Jordan Kyrou because he would have to approve, by the way, if he does get traded. And not for nothing, but the Blues are a playoff contending team. And you can make the argument that they are a Stanley Cup contending team. Maybe not this season, but in the near future. And he's going to be with the Blues until 2031. So there is plenty of time for the Blues to be a Cup contending team again.
What would it take, theoretically, if they were to trade him? What would they need in return?
Oh, this is a good question. And this is a question that I answer very simply. You would either need to get a star defenseman, a star forward, or the first or second overall draft pick. And you might laugh and you might say, Haley, Jordan Kyrou was drafted in the second round. Okay, fair. But the way that he's played and improved himself, he is a first round type of player, despite the fact that he was drafted in the second round, fifth in the second round, but still second round. I can't tell you a specific player, Gil, because I have not been looking at any players as I don't think this is going to happen. But I think that if anybody thinks that, I saw a name, Nick Suzuki. People are saying, oh, that could be a good trade. No, it wouldn't be. Not that I think Suzuki's a bad player by any means, but it just wouldn't make sense. It does not make sense to trade Kyrou.
Yeah, and I don't think it would make sense for the Canadiens to trade Suzuki either, but that's neither here nor there. What's left on the to-do list for the Blues? You mentioned that this is a playoff team, not that far away from being a cup contending team. What are they looking to add at this point, if anything?
Well, it's who they get rid of, and that is Justin Falk. And I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but I did predict the trading of Nick Leddy to the San Jose Sharks. I said that would be a team that would really benefit from Leddy. And the same thing of Justin Falk. I think both of these players, while they're good NHL players, they're not fitting well on this team. The Blues are in a different spot than San Jose. San Jose is an up-and-coming young team with a lot of talent. Sam Dickinson was a guy who I wanted for the Blues, and I have nothing but high expectations for the Sharks. That's a compliment for San Jose, believe it or not. But for the Blues, you need to get rid of players that are going to hurt your team defensively. Now, again, when we look at the defensemen in the league, Ivan Provorov was a name who I was actually really interested in. Now, he did sign an extension with Columbus, so that's not happening right now. But give some of the younger guys in Springfield a chance. And next offseason, not this offseason, but next offseason, there's a lot of names that are going to be free agents. Attack them. But right now, I just don't want to have another season of having these veteran players who are going to make careless mistakes. Adam Jiricek has, and this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying about Springfield, Adam Jiricek has improved tremendously as a player. I've watched him play a lot. The Blues drafted him 16th overall in last year's draft. That's the kind of player I want to see play. That's the kind of player that I want to see have ice time. So let's stop having these veteran players who honestly show me nothing but laziness on the ice. And I'm not trying to be that person, But when you see that Jordan Binnington is making all of these killer saves and you're just kind of standing by the post, not doing anything, that doesn't install confidence within me. So I would love to see a guy like Adam Juracek be able to make the team. But I think that the Blues are going to get rid of Justin Folk ahead of this upcoming season.
All right. I'm sure you'll keep an eye on it throughout the offseason. Haley, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Absolutely. So you can find Locked On Blues on YouTube at Locked On Blues, as well as Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts, on Twitter at Locked On Blues. I post daily, even in the off season. So if you want to see your daily Blues content, make sure you check out Locked On Blues.
All right. Thank you so much, Haley.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's super easy to use, fast to pay out, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. New to FanDuel, well, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Again, if your first $5 bet wins, new customers will get $150 in bonus bets. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to get started. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On New York Rangers, the one and only John Chik. And John, I'd be lying if I said it was a quiet offseason on Broadway for the Rangers. What do you think overall of the moves that the team has made, and is there a plan that you see overall?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of these moves basically were just kind of born out of necessity. I mean, you look at the trade of Chris Kreider. Now, I get it. There's still some Ranger fans that are upset about this. They're mad about this, and, you know, they'll never forgive Chris Drury, and I understand all that. I can understand, obviously, you know, making a connection with these players, especially one that's been here for a decade and a half as he has. But I think it gets to a point sometimes in pro sports, whether it's the Rangers or anybody else or any other sport, where it's just time. You know, it's just time for a player and a team to go their separate ways. And I think that's where we got with Chris Kreider. Last season was bad, not just for Kreider. It was bad up and down all over this roster, just a collection of underachieving players. And when you look at what's going on with this team right now, you know, with Kreider, they needed to move on from him to add a little bit of salary cap space. And they needed to potentially open up a spot for, you know, some of these young forwards that they're really excited about. I mean, especially Gabe Perreault, but even guys like, you know, Brett Berard, Brent Hoffman. It'll be interesting to see how Hoffman can do in a, you know, potentially a bigger role this upcoming season. But again, sometimes it's just time. And I think that's where we got with Kreider. And the other really big move that they made was, of course, the free agent signing of Vladislav Gavrikov. And I had mixed feelings about that going into the offseason, because you look at this free agent market, it's not as strong as some other classes that we've seen. No disrespect to any of the players, obviously, but it felt like they wanted to go get Gavrikov just because he just happened to be the best lefty defenseman available. But then you think about it, and it's like, well, again, weak free agent class, a bunch of guys that were going to be free agents re-sign with their current team right before the 0 hour, so it becomes an even weaker class. Bottom line, the Rangers addressed a position of need. They went out and they made themselves better, and they got one of the best free agents available in this year's class. So it's like, how upset can I really get about that? You know what I mean? So overall, you know, I think it's been good. I think the K'Andre Miller trade was good. Again, I think they kind of just got to a crossroads with Miller where they either had to pay him or trade him. They chose the latter, and to get a first, a second, and a pretty promising prospect in Scott Morrow as well. I think they did a nice job there too. So overall, you know, mixed feelings on the offseason, but I think there's been more good than bad for sure for the Rangers.
Is this a retool, a rebuild, and is this a better team today than they were a year ago? I know they struggled on the ice, but on paper, they were just a year removed from a President's Trophy.
Yeah, I think I would definitely call this a retool as opposed to a full-fledged teardown rebuild. I mean, on one hand, it'd be hard for them to even rebuild because so many guys have no move clauses, but, you know, I mean, I don't think they're going to look to trade Igor or Fox, you know, regardless of what the situation is. You leave those guys there and you build around them. But yeah, I mean, I would certainly call this a retooling. As far as being better than they were last year, like at the start of the season, it's kind of a loaded question because this roster has changed so much. Like they changed more in one calendar year than I think the last 4 years before that. It's crazy. I was going through the numbers the other day on my show, and I think they're missing like 9 guys that were on the opening night roster last year. Lindgren was hurt, but if you count him, it would be 9. But are they better? I'm going to go ahead and say yes. And something else that I've been talking about on my show is I do think that the truth with this team lies somewhere between the two extremes, because 2 years ago, best record in the NHL, President's Trophy winners, everything clicked. Everything was just magic that season until the very end when, they run into the brick wall that is the Florida Panthers. But then last year, it's like you watch them and something just went wrong in that locker room. And I mean, to this day, I can't quite put my finger on everything that happened last year. We'll be here all night if I try to figure that out. But, overall, I think the truth lies somewhere between those two extremes. I certainly think they're a better team than what they showed last year, even with all the changes that they've made.
You talked about something was going on in that locker room. Have the changes to the coaching staff, to the roster, have they addressed those issues adequately?
Yeah, I mean, we don't see everything, obviously, that goes on behind closed doors and everything, but, they wanted to shake things up a little bit, and they've done that. In the last calendar year, you trade, your captain, Jacob Trouba. You trade the longest tenured Ranger by quite a bit in Chris Kreider. You move on from Philip Hedl and Capo Caco and guys like that. Caco was traded for Borgen, and Hedl was part of the deal that brought back JT Miller to the Rangers. I think that's obviously a huge move. That's a move where you're looking to shock the system a little bit. You're looking to change the culture, and you're looking to bring in somebody that just despises losing, and that's JT Miller. And for my money, I mean, I don't know if they're going to name a new captain before the season starts. I almost think they're not going to for some reason, partially because Mike Sullivan's here. He's a new coach, probably wants to see how these guys interact and who the next captain should be. But if they're going to put the C on somebody, it's a little bit of a roll of the dice, because we know that JT Miller, for lack of a better term, can be a little bit of a hothead at times. But be that as it may, I mean, he plays with a ton of intensity. He's a heck of a player. And again, if you want to really jolt this team a little bit and say we're going in a different direction, we're going to play some straight line hockey, I think JT Miller's your guy.
What does the new coach bring to the locker room that was needed for this team?
It's hard to say for sure. I mean, I did a crossover with Hunter and Patrick of Locked On Penguins. Not that I don't know Mike Sullivan, but obviously they see quite a bit more of him than I have over the past decade or so here. I mean, to me, he brings instant credibility with the 2 Stanley Cups right out of the gate with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Obviously, the Rangers going with a retool. I mean, you can kind of talk yourself into that as a Ranger fan, right? Like, he had immediate success the second he took the reins in Pittsburgh. So there's that. I'm hoping that he's a little bit more willing to play some of the young guys than maybe some other Ranger coaches have been. Although you look at coaches across this league, it feels like just about every single one of them, to at least some degree, tend to defer to the veterans just a little bit. But I'm hoping Sullivan will give somebody like Gabe Perreault a chance. Brett Berard is somebody that's under the radar, 5th round pick, but I really like what I've seen. He's played well at every level of hockey, and I thought he looked good for the Rangers last year. So I'm hoping these kids get a chance. And something else you got to do, I think, for sure, is fix these special teams units. You got to get a better power play. They go from top 3 in the league to bottom 5 in 1 year. And even the PK, like last year, they finished like 11th or 12th, but man, that unit fell apart at the end of the season. And you got to get that back on track for sure, too, among several other things.
What is on the to-do list personnel-wise, or do you think they're done for the rest of the offseason?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this the other day. I mean, they don't have a ton of cap space. Right now, Puckpedia shows them at $777K. But if you have to also factor in that they're showing them with 23 players on their roster. So if they choose to carry 22 or even 21, you could potentially look to still add somebody. But I don't know. I mean, when you look at the free agent market right now, I mean, there's nobody there. Like pretty much everybody's signed. I don't even know what the move would be. And honestly, since they're looking for a retool and they're looking to contend this year, I think the better play is to not add anybody at this point, unless it's like somebody on a PTO or, somebody at the league minimum. You don't add anybody. You accrue as much cap space as possible so that heading into the trade deadline this year, you can make a move or two if you're in position to do so and add to this team. But I mean, who knows what it's going to be? This is going to be, I think, my 6th year of doing this. And this year, more than any other, I have no idea what to expect from this team. Like, I'm trying to figure it out, trying to talk myself into this whole retooling, and it's going to be a good season. But man, this could go any which way of about, 50 different ways this season for the Rangers. It really could.
What do you think is their biggest need as of now?
Well, it depends how they line up, because if they line up, and I want them to do this, I want them to put Mika Zibanejad on the wing with JT Miller. Mika got off, and he's not the only one, let me make that clear, but he got off to a miserable start with the Rangers this past season. Once the trade for JT Miller was made, and they pretty quickly decided to put the two of them together, Mika started playing a better brand of hockey, and it wasn't even just the scoring. I mean, that certainly improved as well. There were one or two times where he legit trucked somebody last year, like an open ice after he started playing with Miller. So I think Miller's style of play, he's just one of those dudes, by his style of play, he's going to hold guys accountable. Much less if he has to get in your face or anything. But I honestly think just the way he plays, you're going to have to play a certain style of hockey just to keep up with him. And I think we saw that with Mika. The only issue there is if Mika plays with Miller, then we don't know who's going to center the third line, because Trocheck will be centering another line in the top six, So in that situation, you're looking at either Brodzinski or Parsonen. And honestly, I like Brodzinski. I know he's just this random role player who's kind of an NHL, AHL swingman for his career, but I think he's a better player than people realize. I'd like to actually see him get a chance and leave Mika with JT Miller. Give Brodzinski some run. I think he's earned it. He played hard last year. He's a good leader for some of the young guys. Let's see what he can do. And if it doesn't work out, you can put Mika back at center. You can go out and make a trade, whatever you got to do. But I'd like to see that at the start of this upcoming season.
All right, John, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, I mean, anywhere you're, listening to this, watching this, we're there. We're on YouTube. We're on every audio streaming platform you can possibly think of. And you can find me on Twitter at jchik17, at jchik17. So, yeah, definitely give us a follow. We'll talk some Ranger hockey.
Sounds good. John, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Gil. Appreciate it.
It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Anaheim Ducks, Kyle Kjer. And Kyle, been a very active offseason for the Ducks. You got a new coach, two players who are rumored to be traded for years, finally actually do get traded, and you lock up a new goalie long term. Let's start with the goalie. What does it mean to lock up Dostal for long term for the Anaheim Ducks?
Well, Gil, great question. And yeah, it's been a very busy offseason for the Ducks. And the big thing that having Lukas Dostal locked in for 5 years, $6.5 million, it's not a bad price tag for the team, and now gives Dostal the utter confidence to say, you are the guy, you're the number one, this is it, it's your net now. You go, you run with it, have fun, and the confidence is all there. You could hear it from Pat Verbeek and what he had to say about the player, and that his prime is just ahead of him, and that he's proven himself to be a number one. And I think this young core that Anaheim has, you need to have a good goaltender, and this guy has proven it time and time again. And now that the team's kind of taking steps into a more productive look as in regards to the forwards, at least, I think it's going to relieve a lot of pressure for Dostal, because he's already set franchise records in number of saves per game, saves in a win. He got gold 2 IIHF Worlds ago with Czechia, and a bronze 2 years before that. He's proven time and time again that he can put his name in the big lights and shine just as bright as everyone else.
What are some of the other big moves that stand out for you this offseason?
Well, the one that stands out and I think just really stung every Ducks fan out there was the Trevor Zegras move. It seemed like the way Verbeek was building this team was to kind of bolster a new look Trevor Zegras after his injuries and after doing everything that Coach Cronin asked him to do. And he kind of got pocketed into a winger position. And it sounds like Zegras was more wanting to play center, but there just wasn't a place for him in the lineup. But he was bringing Chris Kreider, who's one of Zegras' top friends, over. He got Joel Quenneville, who was his idol coach growing up. It just seemed like everything was looking Trevor Zegras' direction. And then all of a sudden he's gone. They get Ryan Pelling back, who's probably going to be bottom 6 center. And put in the minutes and grind down there. He's definitely a better replacement than Isaac Lundestrom, but it just seemed like middling pieces for what Verbeek was saying he was not going to pull the trigger on. And we just kind of got some stuff back. But yeah, that was the most interesting. And then John Gibson, you kind of saw the writing on the wall. I definitely wanted to see him be kind of the Ryan Miller to Dostal, but he wasn't done yet being a number one. So now he's over in Detroit with the Red Wings. Ironically, the Ducks have Ville Husso back. So kind of a swap there. And then they also got Radko Murtka, or not Radko Murtka, sorry. They got Peter Mrazek back as the trade for that. Similar name, but so they have two backups for Dostal that are locked up, and so that's that for that. And you get to see kind of Gibson shine out there in Detroit, but definitely two players that the fandom are still kind of mourning out here.
You mentioned Joel Quenneville coming in as coach, forgetting the off the ice issues. Obviously, he has the experience on the ice. He has the resume. What does he bring to the table for the Anaheim Ducks this year?
Well, he definitely brings that resume. He brings being the second most winning coach in the NHL, and he's worked with the team similar to this young core in the Chicago Blackhawks when he went on the cup run with Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, and there's a lot of similarities there. Pat Verbeek and Quenneville were former teammates together, so there's a connection there. But overall, I just think he brings a new, fresh face to the franchise. And not only do they have Quenneville as the head coach, they brought Jay Woodcroft over as an assistant, which apparently he got pretty far in the talks in regards to being the head coach. So the Ducks have a really stacked coaching staff right now. And I think it's just going to create a lot more fun around the rink. As much as you could look at the 21 points in the standings that Cronin improved this team, I don't think it was overall his effort. I think that Lukas Dostal definitely had a big part in that. And now you get to have a guy that has the talent, the skill, the know-how to create a championship team and get this younger core really locked in, no pun intended, and get them buzzing for this next couple of seasons.
Is there one player on this roster who you think will benefit the most from the addition of Joel Quenneville?
Well, it was going to be Trevor Zegras, but that is no longer. So I think the player that's really going to get a big boost and kind of gain his confidence even more is Leo Carlsson. He had a big boost after the Four Nations tournament. I think he's most likely going to end up on the Swedish roster for the Olympics as well. And he's coming in his own as a top center in this league. And his numbers are steadily improving, and he's just getting a lot more accustomed to that smaller ice and getting used to that NHL pace. And I think Quenneville's definitely knows how to work with young forwards like that. And then also on the back end, Jackson Lacomb's looking extremely well. He did fantastic under Coach Cronin. So I can only imagine under a defensive/offensive coach like Quenneville that he's just going to flourish. And the roof is, it's to the moon at this point with what this team can do.
Obviously, there are still some rumors going around. What's left on the to-do list for this offseason? And talk to me about some of those rumors also.
The biggest talk right now and the thing that needs to get done, and everyone in Anaheim is just waiting for the news to break, like checking their Twitter every second, like stressed out. Mason McTavish. He's supposed to be this anchor of the young core. He's one of the few remaining of the core of this young group that's been building this team and kind of went through the dark days of Anaheim. And it looks like, from my perspective, that Verbeek has moved everyone out that would be a potential roadblock to him being a bona fide second line center on this team. The rumors are that he's not happy and that he's getting pushed out. And I saw someone mention like, oh, well, they just drafted Roger McQueen and he's a center and all stuff. But that kid's at least 2 or 3 seasons away from breaking in the NHL. Verbeek's made that very clear that they're going to take their time developing him and not rush him. And McTavish is just he's wanted in the league. So I don't see why Anaheim would try to drop the ball and fumble that when clearly there's a demand for really good, strong second line centers, and they have it. Boston's in on the talks. There's I've seen Montreal being named. There's I want to say Carolina's kind of been looming. There's all these, pretty much every team. There's a bucket list of them just waiting to get their chops at Mason McTavish, and I don't think that is something Verbeek wants to let go. And I see him potentially having a C on this team with Radko Gudas kind of entering the back nine and some of these other vets moving on. I think McTavish would be a great voice in that locker room for the years moving forward. So I really don't want to see that disappear, but I was wrong about Zegras, so who knows how correct I'll be about McTavish.
All right, Kyle, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Absolutely. You can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast. The YouTube is definitely the best because you get all the visuals and graphics and everything, so you can kind of see and you get to look at my wonderful ugly face. But then if you want to check out the social media, I'm on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, pretty much every platform, TikTok, and also YouTube Shorts, and that's under Locked On Anaheim Ducks, or LO_Ducks. And there's also my personal handle is Car Talk Sports, which is KJER Talk Sports. So those are the couple places that you can find me out there on the internets.
All right. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Thank you.
I want to thank my guests, Haley Taylor-Simon of Locked On Blues, John Chik of Locked On New York Rangers, and Kyle Kjer of Locked On Anaheim Ducks for joining me today. I'm Gil Martin. I host the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, and I co-host the Friday edition along with Rachel Donner. Don't forget, we are here every day, Monday through Saturday, bringing you the biggest stories from around the hockey world. So make sure you hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're here all off season long, bringing you the biggest stories from around the NHL. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and thank you so much for watching and listening to the Locked On NHL podcast.